Y'all, I don't want to restart this stream, but I might have to because let me see. Ooh, too close. Wow, this you've got to be kidding me. I'm gonna have to restart this stream. Unless I need this to be horizontal instead of vertical. And this is kind of pissing me off. Ooh, I have an idea. No. Hi to whoever is in here. I might have to restart and do a whole nother stream because this is the wrong orientation and I need to charge what I'm using. Hold on. Hi, Earth Angel Bree. I can finally read comments. Yo, I'm hoping this doesn't cut off. Hold on. Let me see some, y'all. Okay, we're charging. I think we might be able to do it. Okay, please do. So we're getting to some good stuff. It's kind of, the way this book is formatted, it's really like a textbook. So some of this information I've noticed is being repeated. But okay, I got this charging so we can get through this. We can get through it. So we're reading the Sybils, the first prophetesses of Mami Wata. And we left off on page 80. The final destruction of the civil prophecies and the dilemma of Rome and the Papal Church. Before I get into this, I do want to say some things about the month of August. The month of August is going to be full of a lot of delays and communication issues. So, as with everything, focus on what you can control this month and focus on the things that are not stagnant for you, the things that are moving and flowing. Those are the things that you need to focus on, because when we're looking at the astrology, and I look at Vedic astrology, when we're looking at the astrology, there's a lot of shit gonna happen. And I want to say we have like Mercury in retrograde this August. And I'm already kind of experiencing, you know, Mercury retrograde like to come and do a sweep every once in a while. And I'm already experiencing that trickster energy from Mercury. So many delays have happened for me this week, and I only get the result that I want when I just learn how to be patient and deal with you know, unforeseen circumstances. So I wanted to remind y'all about that, and also remind you that communicating effectively is really important this month. Make sure, for my women especially, the words that you utter out of your mouth need to be in alignment with what you want to see happen or what they need to be your words need to be in alignment with your path. Your words need to be in alignment with your desired outcome. Keep that in mind. All right. I'm not going to go off on a spiel like I want to do, because I want to get through this book, because there's some other books that I want to read here on the channel. And I don't have a lot of time today, so I'm only going to be on here for maybe till about 2 or 2:15. If you're catching this for the if you're catching this on the replay, please timestamp it if you don't mind. If you can go down and in the comment section and timestamp when I actually start reading, which is like 6-7 minutes in, please do that. All right. So, the final destruction of the Sybil prophecies and the dilemma of Rome and the Papal Church. The Sibylline books were rendered in the same exact poetic and symbolically rich language, which was considered the trademark of the first Sybil priestess, Phomonia. And if y'all can hear me, please let me know, because I have my AC running and I don't know if that's affecting the sound. This style was used as a measure of authenticity of any prophetic document written during the pre-Christian era. However, after all was said and done, the warring patriarchal factions of the Levitical Hebrews and those of the budding Christian Papals began creating a flood of confusing and contradictory forgeries, espousing their own brand of dogma and attributing them to the Sibyls. Every time I start reading this stuff, I'm just kind of like in a state of awe, because we really come across information and we think that we're learning something, but when it resonates, it's really just you remembering things that you already knew to be true. And that's how I feel reading this book. So, this was the motivating impetus behind St. John, alleged author of the Book of Revelation, a prophetic text which many in the ancient world believed was actually authored by the Sybil Hierophile, or Phomonia. So she went by 2 different names, probably according to her location at the time. Because keep in mind, these Sibyls were priestesses that were working for, that kind of got forced to work for these other temples that had been overthrown. So some of them were no longer in their original temples, and they were working for the people that pretty much enslaved them and made them do prophecies and write books and this, that, and the third. And they were trying to get these women to alter their prophecies and to change certain things so it would fit with the dogma that the Roman Church was trying to push forward so that they could control the world. Okay, so in the ancient world, when he makes the astounding threat, okay, let me restart this. So this was the motivating impetus behind St. John, alleged author of the Book of Revelation, a prophetic text which many in the ancient world believe was actually authored by the Sybil Hierophile, or Phomonia, when he makes the astounding threat that a typical preemptive, there is typos in this, a typical preemptive threat employed by the warring Christian and Jewish sects, both of whom were widely disseminating corrupted and altered Sybil texts. One of the main issues of contention in establishing Levitical and Christian legitimacy was in changing the name Hausa, who the Sibyls stated would be the next savior, and replacing it with that of either Jesus or Yahweh or Jehovah. Hausa appears to be an Afro-Chaldean name similar to Zithros, The mommy fish deity, later known as Oannes. Oh, I can't say some of these words, but I do recognize from, if you haven't watched the series, I encourage you guys to catch up. Oannes, Oannes, I do know that that is the name for Noah, the original name for Noah. So Higgins asserts that the pagan Sybil prophecies, being much clearer than those of the Jews, the Platonist philosophers annoyed because they clearly foretell a great person to come, and unless they allowed it to be Jesus Christ, they could make nothing of them. Another crucial factor, which created a political and theological dilemma for both of these groups, was that these prophecies, spanning more than 4,000 years, were inherently intended for the African nations and their clerics, where the major temples of the Black Goddess and the temples of Ammon, stretching from Egypt, Israel, Turkey, Greece, and Rome, were addressed cyclically by her. The Sybils were African and were the main oracle of the serpent-worshipping tribes. Thus, their prophetic spirit was indeed an ancestral serpent who had issued forth these divine prophecies since the beginning of time. The church populace knew this, but had already condemned the serpent spirit as a manifestation of the highest evil. They were just creating more and more and more and more problems, trying to cover up the truth. That's all these people were doing. Whew. Rome reneges on promise to divine African mother. Meanwhile, as the Roman patricians remained busy expanding its empire and consolidating its power, the social, economic, and political climate began to change in Rome. The Roman Church had long ago removed itself from being simply an apostolic local center of power. It became more concerned with territory and acquiring wealth, and with gaining absolute control as an imperial world power. By the 6th century CE, patriarchal Africa, who had acquired much of its political and economic power by usurping the African matriarchs. Let's highlight this, because this is what I be trying to get really the women to understand. And the more that we understand this truth, the more likely it is for men to come to terms with it. That the way that our clergies are structured now is not how they were originally structured. And the African matriarchs were responsible for the organization and the rulership of these temples. These temples that were creating policies and establishing laws of the land and responsible for the betterment of the community and the family. All of that was going on in these temples. But they were usurped by the Levitical group of Jews who decided that they wanted to try and get an idea of what it feels like to have the same sort of power that the matriarchs had. This one little piece of hair getting on my nerves. So, by the 6th century CE, patriarchal Africa, who had acquired much of its political and economic power by usurping African matriarchs and later through military expansion, had lost much of its economic and political predominance in the ancient world. Many of the African temple priests and priestesses, accustomed to expensive gifts, entertaining high dignitaries, and other such luxuries, succumb to complete corruption. And I gotta highlight this. The African clergy began opening the temples only on certain days and charging exorbitant prices for ceremonies and sacrifices, making them only accessible to the elite. I want y'all to let that sit too. The African clergy began opening the temples only on certain days and charging exorbitant prices for ceremonies and sacrifices, making them accessible only to the elite. An entire crop of foreign impostors, having purchased initiations to acquire economic clout and social status, passed themselves off as authentic Sybils, Reneges, cures, priests, and diviners, creating fringe cults and bizarre systems of rituals and worship where many of the sacred laws and taboos were being ignored and violated. And that brings me to something that I'm probably going to explore on Patreon only, because I really want to talk to y'all about can I say? Yeah, I can say that on here. I want to talk to y'all about menstrual blood and menstrual taboos and blood magic and all of that stuff. And blood sacrifice, blood covenants, all these things on the occult side, on the conjurer side, the sorcery side. There's a lot of taboos that are only taboo because of their connection to women, and then there's some taboos that are taboo for good reason. But a lot of these taboos are because of their connection to women and a woman's power. Anyways, additionally, a new generation of Caesars, Christians, and politicians nurtured on a racist diet of political and religious propaganda, born from Greek and Roman philosophers and theologians, were espousing a more supremacist doctrine, which entailed divorcing themselves from all foreign, especially African, religious and cultural influence. Worst pen I could have chose. The self-hate of it all is so bad. Constantine the first Christian and pagan emperor, reigned as a priest of Sophia, Artemis, the Black Diana, claiming Black Hellenic matriarchal lineage. Hellenic meaning in that region that we were talking about, Turkey, Greece, parts of Egypt. Constantine maintained the festivals to her, but fearing a resurgence of the old matriarchal divine orders, he outlawed a penalty of death, all forms of divination, ancestral sacrifices, and festive ceremonies. He knew these sacerdotal functions could only be performed through lineage. African priestesses or priests, which included the Sybils, Pythias, which would quickly usurp the authority of the Roman papals, and they were therefore outlawed. Hi to whoever's here. Hi, Nisa. I haven't seen you in a little minute. The last recording that I did, or the last live that I did, I hadn't figured out how to like view the live chat on the device that I'm using. So I feel like some of y'all might have been saying things and I never saw it, but I'm not ignoring anyone. I'm happy to have everybody here. Okay, so broken promises, Sybil goddess curses Rome. So there's a picture here that I want to point out. It says Roman catacombs of black Roman citizen carrying religious offering. The level of persecution was such that many of these devotees of the Sybils and others suffered horribly under the imperial church in Rome. Most resorted to clandestine meetings in the underground catacombs to honor their African ancestors, deities, and martyrs. And this is another reason why I said in a video or something on Threads at some point that I feel a majority of the bodies buried in those catacombs in Rome, I believe Paris, are probably black bodies. And they're probably people who were slaughtered for various reasons. Most likely it has something to do with religious persecution. What did you say, Nisa? I still watch your pick cards daily. I always miss your lives, but I'm here today. Oh, thank you. I was so not worried. Maybe worry is the right word. I really didn't know how y'all were gonna take from me like transitioning from pick of cards to this type of stuff, because I'm a metaphysician and a student of anthropological type studies. And I was like, this is gonna be a hard switch. This is gonna be a rough switch, but this information has to get out there, and I'm not the only person talking about it. But this information, when I tell you the spirits have been on my ass about getting this information out there, I just decided, forget making another page. I'm just going to talk about it here on this page. But I do have more pick a cards on my Patreon. And I think I'm going to make pick a cards for like, I have some pick a cards on the first tier. And then I have a ton of pick a cards in the second tier. But most of those are like relationship and erotic reads. But on the first tier, I've got maybe 1, 2, 3 pick a cards that I'm about to upload, and they're gonna be like self-focused. So if you would like to support the channel, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, sharing, and also patronizing my pick card. Patronizing my Patreon. I feel like the switch is beautiful. Thank you for pushing the knowledge, because I didn't know. Where'd it go? I didn't know anything about it. Awesome. I'm happy to share. And we'll get to that part later, because I'll start rambling about something else. Let me finish what I'm working on. All right, so this is the picture. This woman here. I got places to go, places to be, because I gotta get to the other side of the world. I gotta get to places that I used to see in my dreams, and now I understand why, because they weren't really dreams. I was traveling. I was going places that I remember being in previous lives. The Mediterranean has always fascinated me. Egypt, yeah, but really the Mediterranean has always fascinated me. There's some sort of connection there, and I feel like it's because of these women, our mothers. So, Constantine, who once tolerated for political reasons African and other religious traditions, also began a campaign of destroying all of the African temples and shrines, especially in Asia Minor, Turkey. He finished off the final desecration at Delphi by pillaging and carting off all of its art, books, and statuaries to adorn his new Christian temple at Constantinople, which is Turkey. Later, he and his Christian emissaries invaded, destroyed, and pillaged Carthage and the Temple of Tanit. These deliberate acts of sacrilege negated a centuries-old promise made by the earlier Caesars to the black goddess Diana, that Rome would never invade or destroy Carthage nor persecute her people. See, in the last reading, we talked about Octavian and how Octavian was, calling himself a Caesar, which means it's a title, it means Lord or God. And how he went to get a consultation by a Sybil, and the Sybil kept denying him because she was like, I'm not going to address you as Caesar because you are not my God. You are not, that's disrespectful to the clergy and to the Great Mother. Eventually, she was forced to divine for him, and when she did the divination, spirit came down and he had a visitation from mommy where she was holding a baby, and she basically told him, cut all that shit out. She told him, relax. And she told him, if you do like I asked you to do, you don't have to worry about your city being invaded. And so he kept that promise. But it looks like Constantine, who was the next ruler, came through and was like, yeah, no, we're finna get rid of all of these pagan and African shrines and temples. And so he broke the promise that was made to the Great Mother. These deliberate acts of sacrilege negated a centuries-old promise made by the earlier Caesars to the black goddess Diana, that Rome would never invade or destroy Carthage nor persecute her people. Ridiculous. Just foolishness, y'all. However, under the current Emperor Julian, Constantine's nephew, tried to maintain this promise and attempted to restore many of Black Diana's temples, but he only lived 2 years. The political process, arguing the continued destruction or attempts to revive African religious customs and institutions throughout Rome and her colonial territories, shuffled back and forth in the Roman Senate for decades. This makes me think also of what's that man name over there in Russia? Is it Putin? I think it's Putin that I'm thinking about. And how he's always seen with the Black Mother, Diana. Yeah, it's Vladimir Putin. He's always seen paying his respects to the Black Diana, the Black Madonna, who was really just a representation of the African mommy who's responsible for all of creation. These people know what they're doing. They have these grand ceremonies for a reason. They're rituals. They are doing magic. They're conjuring. They're manipulating energy. But eventually, because you can only play with your mama for so long until she start going ham. Eventually, things have to get turned around. And that's pretty much what we're about to see happen in the next few years. It's really already happening. Determined to rid Rome and Europe of African matriarchal and spiritual dependency, Roman general Theodosius I promptly confronted the Senate, who for 1,200 years kept their promise to the African mother. He demanded that they stop financial support of the African temples to hold festivals to the African goddesses and to other gods. The Senate responded that the African gods had blessed them immensely and that they would continue to bring money to the African priests for the usual sacrifices. Oh, and I don't know if you're watching this right now, Anissa, but I just saw. Thank you. I need to mark this page. This is really important to know because this is going to make me go down a rabbit hole when it comes down to Putin. The infamous Theodosius responded that they should embrace Christianity, claiming that the Roman treasury had no further funds for making the annual sacrifices. Thus, the edict Religio Paganorum had been issued, classifying African-based traditions as heathenistic and pagan. In the year 451 CE, by pain of death, all forms of foreign and African religion were outlawed by a constitutional amendment under Emperor and cousin of Theodosius, Valentinian III. General Stilicho, a Gaul or German, by imperial decree, struck a major blow when he demolished the temple of Apollo. Ooh, not the temple of Apollo. See, that was going to stir up the men's. Not saying that we don't respect that particular deity, but remember at this time, the men had tried to raise the sun deities up to the level of Mami. The final death blow was delivered by Theodosius and his sons during the reign of Emperor Valentinian I. Now backed by the full support of the Roman Senate, Theodosius, in a violent wave of delight and fury, began in Egypt, where he closed and destroyed all of his Isis and Black Diana temples before turning his virulent rage against those remaining temples in Rome. So they started in Egypt and made their way to Rome. Temple reports. This is an excerpt because Mama Zagbe visited a lot of these places and did her own research and looked at art, scriptures, visited different museums and stuff and libraries to obtain some of this information. It says, among the unspeakable crimes being referred to what was the destruction by Bishop Theodosius of the Great Library of Alexandria, because it contained heathen literature, which so often took place at the hands of fanatical Christian bishop attempting to wipe out all traces of history before Christ, and not as a result of an accidental fire, as the story is usually told. I've been saying this for a long ass time. There was no magical fire that burned everything down. If there was a fire, it was intentional, and everything that was burned, I highly doubt that they didn't save a lot of these texts. I believe a lot of these texts are hidden in, places that have a lot of protection and a lot of clergy and a lot of spiritual protection over them. All throughout Africa, especially, the Romans destroyed all of Mami's major temples and established monks and hermits, or they urinated and defecated in its ruins to make certain the Africans did not rebuild them. They were fucking disgusting. These folks were, and I'm not one of those people that's like, I never group an entire group of people and say that they're this, that, or the third. I'm too much of an individual for that shit to ever make sense. So that has never really flied with me. However, I do pay attention to patterns of behavior. And these people were insane. The lengths that they went to cover up the truth and to cover up everything else is ridiculous. They urinated and defecated in the ruins of these temples to make sure that it was so filthy that Africans didn't even want to be in the vicinity, because you also got to remember this is the same group of people that was passing a lot of disease around. In their diabolical mayhem, they also destroyed the remaining Sibylline oracles anywhere that they found them, especially in Rome. More than 300 years after the death of Christ, Rome was now officially a Christian nation, and all forms of divination, rituals, and sacrifices were strictly prohibited. Divination, rituals, sacrifices are all necessary for any functioning clergy. Now we have people prophesying and giving us information, and we have to question where it's coming from because we don't have the system that used to be in place with the divination, actually being like inheriting the gift to divine or the gift to prophesy for a community, because a lot of people have these gifts, but not everybody is meant to share it with the community. It's just crazy. From that moment onwards, according to some accounts, Rome began to experience all forms of misfortunes. Because of these crimes and the promises not kept by Rome to the divine African mother, the African spirits were inconsolably grieved and angry. Africans and those who followed the old religious order were routinely denounced, ridiculed, persecuted, crucified, and rendered ignorant heathens. Subsequently, the Sybils took great pleasures in forecasting the certain ruin of Rome. So they thought that they were going to take all of these priests and priestesses, force them into these temples to divine and cast just for the officials, just for them, and then it had to be hush hush. They thought that was going to happen, and these women weren't still going to, women and men, these priests and priestesses weren't still going to share the prophecies that they were getting directly from the mother, which really, and even I'm thinking about some of the things that I've been shown since childhood. It all relates to doom and glory. Doom, I'm not fear mongering, but the understanding that in order for things to change, there has to be a radical shift globally for things to actually change, for these systems that are oppressing so many and serving a very small group of people they're all being held up by the institution that flipped it in the first place. And black people, African people, melanated people, indigenous people have to know these things. We have to know this history. World history is our history. World history is our history. So if we do not study the history of the world, we don't study all of these regimes, these empires, we get so caught up in being fascinated with Egypt, and then, like, girl, that's the beginning of the patriarchy. The pharaonic period was really the beginning of a patriarchal system that didn't fall under a matriarchal umbrella to keep it balanced. Because when I talk about matriarchy, I'm not talking about women rule and men suck. That's not what I'm saying. We need men. I love men. I love men. But what y'all have been taught for like over 6,000 years is embedded in your DNA. It's so, there's so many things that has to be like deprogrammed in order for us to get anywhere. But we're gonna keep coming back through this bitch. We're gonna keep reincarnating to see nothing but doom. Nobody's gonna see glory if we don't change certain things. Or the people whose reality is actually positive are going to be the people who have done enough work to elevate the ancestors and their lineage and to get back connected to who they are through their lineage, through their ancestry, no matter where you're from. And recognizing that we're all supposed to be stewards of this planet, stewards of the earth. Which means that we don't need to be fighting over resources that are plentiful. Doesn't make any sense. Let me keep going. The peculiar dilemma of the imperial papacy. With the old African traditions well suppressed, the Roman papal still had one major problem. They could not get around the undeniable fact that the Sybil prophecies were still the only legitimate authority of a high and divine order, being exploited by both Roman and Jew or Hebrew sides to advance their own political agendas. According to Higgins, these Sybil prophecies have been equally troublesome to the Roman priests and Roman and Greek philosophers. The diviners would have been very glad of them. The divines would have been very glad of them, but the adoption of them carried with it the shocking consequence that God must have had such bad taste as to have preferred even the wicked Sybil pagans to his own people. Ooh. The papal authorities' problems were further complicated by the fact that most of the ritual remedies inherent and specific within the Sybil prophecies required the traditional sacrificial propitiation, of which only the Sybils and other African priests could perform legitimately. The arrogant Roman papacy found the idea of animal sacrifice repulsive and had to either categorically reject the oracles entirely, discredit the Sybils, or find a means to remove that specific requirement from the Sybils' prophetic books completely. This ignorant and contemptuous attitude by them is reflected in the statement made by Bell. How much soever they, the Sybils, might pretend to prophesy, they could not have done it. They could not have it by divine inspiration. For most of the oracles, when consulted by the Romans, directed to the most idolatrous and abominable rites. Therefore, if they, the Sybil's, had the gift of prophecy, they must have received it from diabolical or evil spirits. So basically, they were saying, for any of you that may be connected to an ATR, or you're just familiar with like Santeria, Lukumi, Isheshe, Voodoo, or anything like that, you know that sacrifice is a part of it. And the reason that sacrifice has to be done, what has been revealed to me, is that sacrifice wasn't always necessary. We didn't always have to perform so many sacrifices. But because of the history that predates our existence, there's certain debts that have to be paid. There's karmic debts that have to be paid. And the animals that give their lives basically incarnated knowing that this was going to be their end. This was going to be how they leave the world. They were allowing themselves to be used by mommy, by their creator, by the spirit. So what the Romans had to do is make that something that was demonized. But what's crazy is, how can that be demonized when they're responsible for so much desecration? So you're telling me that animal sacrifices, meaning that we are going to an animal, so not only we can appease the spirit, but we can feed the community, because we was going to do that anyway. We were going to do that anyway. So that's demonized, but, you know, desecrating temples and forcing women into institutions, and I can't say a lot of the things that I want to say. Using violent and heinous acts to make these priests and priestesses and the general population bow down to you because we fear your power. That's more acceptable than, you know, doing whatever ebo is necessary for sacrifice. I feel like, I don't know what has gotten into me today, but I'm kind of annoyed even just reading this shit. I'm kind of annoyed because the more that I read, the more certain things are just like clearly in our face. And I don't like that. I don't like people playing in my face. All right, let me keep reading. The attempt to remove all references to animal sacrifice created a flood of forged documents from both the Jewish and Roman camps, both groups putting into the mouths of the Sybil's contradictory and absurd prophetic admonishments and arguments against idolatry. This caustic and convoluted propaganda worked in both of their interests. However, the Roman and Jewish clerics' rationale in justifying the continued use of the Black Sybil prophecies was becoming more absurd and irrational by the minute. Consider the following. Because idolatry had been introduced in the world, and the devil, to conform the false divinities, found a great success in giving answers through the idols, in order that those had come to consult them should believe that these divinities were the true God. These answers were given to many temples of the idols, and the most remarkable ones were in Dodona, a province in Egypt, where, according to Diodorus Siculus, in the depth of a wooded forest, there was a temple dedicated to Jupiter, which is another name for Ammon. Theft, plagiarisms, and other exploitations of the Sybil's prophecies. We are told that St. Augustine the great doctor of the Christian church, employed corrupted and plagiarized prophecies of the Sybil's in his 22-book treatise on the city of God. Similarly, the Sybil's fourth eclogue, considered to be a masterpiece of pagan prophecy, was massacred by the Roman poet Virgil in his so-called Oratio ad Sanctum Coetum. They were not alone. The list of writers who heavily quoted from these black prophetess included other church fathers who had formed a committee specifically to adulterate their sacred works. Included were Clemens, Alexandrinus, Justin, Martyr, Athenagoras, Theophilus of Antioch, Tertullian, Lactantius, Eusebius, Saint Jerome, Saint Austin, and Tacitus, all of whom were hailed by the church fathers as a distinguished body of Sybilists. An appointment to the board of Quindecimviri was considered a very high honor. Their main objective were in destroying their most threatening rivals, Judaism and African idolatry, and employing both Judaism and the Sybil prophecies in laying the eschatological, theological, and philosophical foundation of Christianity. G. Murray, Chaos Springs Order. We're in that time now. It's the three. Ooh, talk about it. Talk about it, because things. I'm going to get through this page and then I'm going to say a few words because I got to get up out of here. But I'm going to come back to that comment. Who was that comment by? G. Murray. I'm going to come back to that comment. So, theft, plagiarisms, exploitation, okay, we read that. The final destruction. As stated earlier, as long as African deities remain the divine and prophetic authority in Rome, the ecclesiastical and political power would remain in the hands of the African priestess or priestesses. This, along with the Roman patricians being unable to navigate around the many prophecies intended for the African pagan masses, frustrated Augustus. To begin the dismantling of the African gods hold on Rome, he issued a decree to destroy the Sibylline oracles. He then proceeded to burn more than 2,000 of them and forbade by punishment of death the reading of the Sibylline books. He kept only those that could be altered or that addressed the ultimate fate of Rome. These actions followed years of persecution, discrimination, and social ostracism, reminiscent of modern-day politicians, each successive emperor promising to restore the old African gods in order to garner political support, only to later renege on their promises. Okay. All right, so G. Murray, I don't know if you're even still in here, but your comment means something, and I love how this just got tied up at the end. She said, these actions followed years of persecution, discrimination, and social ostracism, reminiscent of modern-day politicians, each successive emperor promising to restore the old gods in order to garner political support, only to later renege on their promise. That is literally what is happening in America. Okay? That's what's happening. I said on Threads that things have already been determined. Y'all are raising your blood pressure. Not y'all. I don't know what y'all are doing. But folks are out here raising their blood pressure, you know, doing the absolute most. And I understand people are passionate and they feel like what they're doing is going to contribute to the greater good. But I hate to be the bearer of bad news. But it's not going to change anything because you can never, it was never set up to change. It was set up to make everybody a pawn. There is no change in, the only way this is going to change is if we completely destroy the system that is already in place with proper plans for rebuilding prior to destruction. What we're seeing happening right now in politics, and you know what, Brother Yusuf said something about this. I don't know if y'all watch his channel, but I catch his videos every once in a while. And Brother Yusuf talked about how Kamala and Kali, we have both got the same download about Kamala, about how she was going to, we are likely to have a black female president. Okay. So when you look at Kamala and you look at her history, I find it really interesting that she comes from Indian background. And I believe her middle name is Kali. Let me look this up. Let me double check. Let me look at Kamala name. Or is it let me, because I don't want to tell y'all wrong. Devi. Kamala Devi Harris. Kamala Devi Harris. What we're about to see is, this is the introduction to the matriarchy starting to come together. And I mean introduction as in, nothing's going to change with the politics, with the politicians that are coming in. But what they are doing is they're showing us the direction that the people are headed, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Like, of course, it's possible for us to have a black female leader or a woman of color in position of authority, and I'm using air quotes because they don't have any real power in this system. They just get to play a role. But the optics mean a lot to the masses. And that is what is about to happen. That man that y'all hate that starts with a D and his last name starts with a T, that man is unfortunately a necessary evil. He is the catalyst for change that a lot of people have been trying to delay. It's like people want a revolution, but they're afraid of what happens when a revolution breaks out. People are fearful of things that when you, for example, these Sybils could have easily been persecuted for their actions. They could have been persecuted when they went down to those catacombs and gave offerings and, you know, visited the shrines. But they didn't, it's not that they didn't care, it's just that they understood what they were doing and they had no fear. The dogma and the doctrine and all this other stuff that we are programmed with as soon as we get here is doing nothing but instilling fear. And if you are to the point where you are so like scared of people fear DEATH. I don't want my I gotta be careful what I say on here. People fear the end. People fear the end, as if not everybody is gonna go through it. People have no understanding of people are so afraid of the end. That's the only way I can really put it. And because of that, people are afraid to actually be revolutionaries. People are afraid to actually risk things. But if you are afraid, then like what is your purpose for being here if you're just gonna be scary all the time? If you're just gonna live in fear all the time, if you're just gonna do what you're supposed to do so that you don't have to suffer, you know, some made up consequence that society puts on you. It's not even a divine consequence. Facts. You get what I'm saying? Like, and more men need to understand what, I don't know what some other creators are talking about or other speakers are talking about, but when I talk about the matriarchy, I'm talking about restoring family. I'm talking about putting our mothers back on the pedestal that they belong on. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about us bringing our rites of passage back into the community. I'm talking about us getting back connected to Mother Earth, because she sustains us all. And when we disrespect her, when we neglect her, abandon her, when we use her for all of her goodness and all of her resources without pouring back into her, what do you think the result is going to be? What do you think the result is going to be when you disrespect the very thing that gave you life? The very thing that's sustaining you? What y'all are going to see how, as time goes on, divine consequences are going to get a lot harsher, and they're going to come a lot quicker. But a lot of y'all are about to receive a lot of blessings, because it's time for you to receive your blessings. But all of this is basically telling us that the mothers are paying attention and they're coming back. And some of the mothers are nice, temperamental, sweet, easy to, I made a post about this with the EIME, easy to appease. Some of the mothers are merciful. Some of the mothers, you know, all you got to do is say the right thing and they'll let you, you know, carry on. But other mothers will chop your hands off and never talk to you again. That's the type of energy that's about to come down on this planet. Like, some of y'all are going to run into the wrong one. And when I'm saying mothers, I'm talking about the matriarchal mothers, the earthly mothers, the celestial mothers, the ancient mothers, the primordial mothers. All of those things that are connected to the feminine principle. This earth, we really got to get back centered with this earth. What time is it? I'm gonna have to get off of here soon. Oh, I went on a rant today. I don't know. That's just how I'm feeling. So I'm gonna try from this day forward. I usually try, let me see. We need that balance restored. I don't think it'll be sunshine. It's not gonna be sunshine and rainbows. It's not. Like, how could it be? Since I was a very little girl, I've had dreams where I was constantly in like a war zone, or I was at home and I was protecting my family from intruders and all of this other stuff. As I get older, I'm starting to realize how that is probably prophetic, in the sense that so much is about to shift that we're gonna have to be, we're just gonna have to defend ourselves. And we're gonna have to be more self-sufficient. We can't depend on the government for our daily needs, our necessities. And that's another bone that I have to pick within our community. Because people say that they want change and they want revolution, but then when it comes down to this is what I have realized. Because we are tribal people, meaning we find our group and we stick with our group, we have to start recognizing that just because we have been put together under some umbrella term, it doesn't mean that all of us desire the same things. It doesn't mean that all of us value the same things. Like, we're going to have to get comfortable with finding our tribe, riding for our tribe, sticking with our tribe, and being able to collaborate with other groups instead of competing with them, instead of putting them down and doing all of this weird shit that happens. We just have to get more comfortable with understanding that it's okay to be tribal. It's okay to be different than your neighbor and still respect your neighbor. Like, still have peace with your neighbor. That's how things used to be. This family or this tribe down here, they're known for this, that, and the third. Maybe they're known for fishing and craftsmanship. And the tribe over here is known for I don't know, studying the stars and carpentry. I don't know. And the two groups meet each other. They understand each other's differences. They understand what they going for and what they going for and what they not going for and what we not going for. And we just learn to coexist. Just like all of the animals in the damn forest. They learn to coexist. We just coexist. It's so simple. It's really simple. But until everybody does the inner work, until everybody comes to the realization that we're really not separate from one another, we just incarnate here with different experiences and, experiences that we carry over from past lives, but in reality, we're not separate from one another. And when you are connected to your ancestors, you know this about yourself. You start to see these things in the world and within your family and within yourself. I went off on a tangent, but that's going to be the end of this video. I got to get off of here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Keep in mind that I'm going to try and get on here every Friday. I think Friday is going to be the day that I try to go live. I may go live on other days throughout the week. My schedule is kind of, it's set, but it's not set. You know what I mean? But make sure you're following me on Threads if you are on Threads. And message me, comment down below, share this video, like the video. Oh, patronize my business. You can go onto my Patreon. My Patreon is for women only, but I have a lot of content up there ranging from conjure, self-care rituals, wellness, all kinds of good stuff. There's some pick a card. There's a lot of pick a card readings up on there too. And if y'all want me to, I might start incorporating oracle readings, live oracle readings here on the channel, because that's been a thought of mine too. I just haven't asked to see if y'all even want me to do that. I have so many ideas running in my head all the time that I never really know what I'm gonna end up doing. I'm really spirit led, so hold on, I'm trying to read stuff. Bright mind, you have peace. Thank you. Bless you. So yeah, y'all stay safe in this weather. Whenever you're watching this, I live in Florida, so it looked like we're probably gonna get some bad weather soon. That's a daily occurrence. So y'all be safe. Pay attention to your dreams. Drink water. Get some sun. Do some deep breathing. And take care of yourselves. I will see y'all in the next video.